Okay guys, we are starting Unit 2, so we're going to start Day 0, and this is going to be a square root review. So I'm going to put at the top of this page a list of all of the perfect squares so that you guys can reference that. So we'll just start with those. So go ahead and just copy these down. These are a great reference for you guys to have when you're doing these problems. You can always use your calculator if you're not sure as well. Okay. So let's start with number 1. So we're going to simplify. So if it's already a perfect square, all you have to do is take the square root of what's given to you. So the square root of 100 is 10. It's a perfect square. So let's go through and actually just do all the odds together. I'm going to leave the evens for you guys to do on your own, and then when we're done going over the odds, go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll fill in the answers for the evens for you guys to check. So for our purposes right now, for number 3, we're going to say that there's no real solution to 3 because we don't know how to take the square root of a negative number yet. So we'll just put no real solution for this. And 5. So 5, it says what's the square root of 128? 128 is not a perfect square. So remember, this is when we're going to look for a perfect square multiple and then reduce down that way. So 64 is a perfect square multiple of 128. So we're going to take the square root of 64, and we're going to leave our root 2 on the inside there. So let's jump down to 7. Same thing again. 75 is not a perfect square. So remember, you can reference the list at the top. So I'm going to take the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. You always want to put your perfect square first, because then you're going to take the square root of that. So I have 5 root 3. Don't forget about your 4. You have to bring that down and multiply. So you have 4 times 5. So you end up with 20 root 3. 9. Same thing again with number 9. 72 isn't a perfect square. So we're going to take the square root of 36 and the square root of 2. So this breaks down to 6 root 2. Don't forget about your 3. So it's 3 times 6. So that becomes 18 root 3. And 11. So again, 200 is not a perfect square. Feel free to check that at the top of your list, but it's not a perfect square. So we're looking for a perfect square that goes evenly into 200. So we have the square root of 100, the square root of 2. So the square root of 100 is 10. So we have 10 root 2. And again, don't forget about your negative 4. Negative 4 times 10 is negative 40 root 2. So that's it for the odds on the first page. Go ahead and get started. Fill in those answers for the odds. I'm just going to write those answers in for you guys so you can check those. And then we're going to flip over and do the evens. So pause the video, work those problems out, and then check those. So if you guys have questions on any of those, you can ask tomorrow in class. So there's the bottom half. So check those green answers, so we can go over any of the ones that you had to work out on your own if you had questions for those. Now I'm going to flip over and we'll do the second page. So again, we'll do the odds. So we're going to start with 13. So 13 is radical 12 times radical 6. So all you do for those is multiply what's underneath. So we're going to have radical 72. And again, we're going to try to break that up with a perfect square multiple. So we know that 36 is a perfect square multiple, so we end up with 6 root 2. Skip 14, you guys can do that one on your own. 15, same thing again, multiply what's on the outside by the outside, so negative 3 times 4 gives us negative 12. Inside by inside, so 5 times 30 gives us square root of 150. So we're going to break down what's on the inside. 150 with a perfect square, so we have the square root of 25 and the square root of 6. So the square root of 25 comes out to be 5, and we have our root 6. But again, don't forget about your negative 12. So it's negative 12 times 5, so our final answer is negative 60 root 6. 17. So this one I typically like to rewrite so you guys can see it as kind of two independent square root values. So for this one, it's nice and easy. Square root of 121 is a perfect square. Square root of 49 is a perfect square. So it just comes out to be 11 over 7. 20 is a little bit different, so we're going to rewrite those. So you have the square root of 75 and you have the square root of 16. 16 we know is a perfect square. However, 75 is not. So let's take 75 and break that down. So that's the square root of 25 and the square root of 3. So that becomes 5 root 3. And we're going to take the square root of 16 on the bottom, and that is 4. So your final answer is 5 root 3 over 4. Oh, and that was an even. Look at that. You guys are lucky. I skipped the odds. So now I'm going to go back and do 19, and you guys can do 21 on your own then. So I'll do 19 instead. So 19, the same thing again, square root of 11 over the square root of 9. There are no perfect square multiples that go into 11, so we are just going to leave it as is. So it's the square root of 11, and 9 is a perfect square, so that's just over 3. So go ahead and do 21 when you work on your own instead. And we'll jump down to 23. So we have 3 over radical 7. So you guys we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into trig, but we don't ever want to have a radical in the bottom of our fraction. So the denominator always has to be a whole number. You can't have that radical sign there. So we're going to multiply it by itself in the top and the bottom to get rid of that there. So we have 3 root 7 in the top, and radical 7 times radical 7 ends up being just 7. So we have 3 radical 7 over 7 for 23. So I'm going to fill in the rest of these for you guys right now. So go ahead and pause the video and then check your answers back. Again, if you have questions on any of the ones we didn't go over, or even any of the ones we went over, you can ask in class. Just so you know, when we're checking your notes for this, don't forget you need to have the work. I'm just showing you the answer. So if you do not have the work, you will not get full credit for this. You need to show us the work. I'm just filling in the answers for you guys so that you guys can double check those. Last one is negative root 5. So that's it for day 0.